Welcome to Hamster NBC. I'm Pears the Hamster. This is Kids Ask Why, the show where curious kids ask big questions, and the answers surprise not only kids, but parents too. Today's question is a special one, so listen closely and stay curious. And before we begin, remember to watch till the very end, because a long-awaited bedtime story is waiting for you. A calm story. A cozy story made especially for a quiet, peaceful night. What nerves does the world's largest whale have? Imagine the ocean. Dark, deep, vast, and suddenly, a creature the length of a 9-story building slowly rises out of the water. It's a blue whale, the largest animal on Earth. But here's the question. If a whale is so huge, what kind of nerves does it have? Are they thick like ropes or thin like threads? Let's figure it out. Our bodies have nerves. They're like electrical cables. Signals run along them. Move, swim, open your mouth. If you touch something hot, a signal quickly travels along the nerve to your brain. Now imagine a whale. Its body can be up to 34 meters long. That's like a long bus. Only alive, which means some of its nerves need to stretch almost the entire length of its body. But how do you make a nerve 25 to 30 meters long? Does it have to be very thick or very strong? For a signal to travel quickly along a nerve, it needs good insulation. Humans and other mammals have a special sheath around their nerves, almost like the plastic sheath around an electrical wire. This sheath helps the signal travel faster. Scientists have studied the nerves of cetaceans and discovered something surprising. Their nerves are also well insulated, even better than one might expect. And here's the most surprising part. Individual nerve fibers in whales aren't that thick. A human nerve fiber is typically about 1 to 2 micrometers thick. This is incredibly thin, many times thinner than a human hair. And in whales, it's up to 15 micrometers. Yes, it's thicker, but not gigantically thicker. For comparison, the nerves of some large mollusks reach 1 millimeter in thickness. This is 60 times thicker than those of whales. So, whales don't just make their nerves enormous. They use a trick. But there's another problem. When a whale eats, it opens its mouth so wide that it takes in more water than its own body. It's like trying to swallow a whole bathtub. At this point, everything in its body stretches, and its nerves too. And here lies another secret. The normal nerves of most animals don't handle stretching well. Even if they're stretched just a little, they begin to conduct signals less effectively. In humans, nerve strain is one of the most common injuries, but whales can stretch their nerves almost twice as long. How is this possible? The nerve cells themselves barely stretch. They remain just as fragile, but inside the thick nerve, their processes aren't arranged straight, but wavy, almost like little springs. When a whale opens its mouth, the nerve sheath lengthens, and these springs straighten out. Imagine a coiled spring. If you pull it, it gets longer, but it won't break. Furthermore, the nerve sheaths of whales contain a lot of elastin, a special protein that stretches well. Thanks to this, whale nerves can stretch up to twice their original length and still function. But there's another mystery. If a nerve is 30 meters long, how long does it take for a signal to travel from the tail to the brain? An instant? A split second? No. A signal along the blue whale's longest nerves can travel from 1.5 to 6 seconds. Imagine you decide to move your tail, and the signal travels for several seconds. For small, fast animals, this would be disastrous. They need to flee or catch prey instantly. But a whale is a giant. It doesn't need to suddenly disappear. It swims slowly and calmly through the ocean. Therefore, it can afford this leisurely communication. There's another amazing fact. During growth, blue whales extend their nerve fibers at a rate of up to 3 centimeters per day. This is faster than many cells, even cancer cells, grow. Scientists also speculate that in such long nerves, not everything is produced in one place. If molecules traveled from one end to the other, the 30-meter journey would take months. Most likely, there are small factories along the entire length of the nerve, producing everything needed right there. And now we can answer the main question. What kind of nerves do whales have? The individual fibers are not very thick, up to about 15 micrometers, but they are combined into bundles up to 1 centimeter thick. And most importantly, they are flexible, stretchable, and spring-like. Whale nerves are not gigantic in thickness. They are gigantic in length and in the intricacy of their design. And perhaps that is what makes them truly amazing. And now the day is slowly drawing to a close. The noise grows quieter. Thoughts slow down. And it's time for storytelling. But before we begin, let's do one small but important thing. If you enjoy learning new things, if you enjoy listening to stories before bed, and if you want to come back again, subscribe to the Hamster NBC channel and like this video. This way, you'll help us create even more kind stories and clear explanations for children all over the world. Now, get comfortable. History is waiting for you. Once upon a time, there were 25 tin soldiers, all brothers, born from an old tin spoon. They had rifles slung over their shoulders, staring straight ahead. And what a magnificent uniform. They were kept in a box, and when the lid was removed, the first thing they heard was, "Oh, tin soldiers." A little boy cried out, clapping his hands. They had been given to him for his birthday, and he arranged them. All the soldiers were exactly alike, except for one that was a little different. He had only one leg, he was cast last, and there wasn't enough tin. But even on one leg, he stood as firmly as the others, and it was to him that a remarkable story would unfold. On the table where the soldiers found themselves were many other toys, but the most striking was a beautiful cardboard palace. Small windows allowed one to peer into the halls. In front of the palace, trees stood around a small mirror representing a lake, and wax swans swam. All this was charming, but the cutest thing of all was the girl standing in the castle doorway. She was cut out of paper, her skirt of finest cambric, a blue ribbon over her shoulder, and a sequin on her chest. The girl stood on one leg, arms outstretched. She was a dancer and raised her other leg so high the tin soldier couldn't see her other leg, and so assumed she was also one-legged. If only I had a wife like that, he thought. But she's a noble woman, living in a palace. All I have is a box, and there are 25 of us soldiers in it. It's no place for her, and he hid behind the snuff box, which stood right there on the table. From there, he had a perfect view. That evening, all the other tin soldiers were returned to the box, and the people went to bed, and the toys themselves began to playing games of visiting, war, and ball. The tin soldiers scurried around in the box, wanting to play too, but they couldn't lift the lid. The nutcracker tumbled. The slate danced. Such a din arose that the canary woke up and began whistling. Only the tin soldier and the dancer remained standing. She still stood on one toe, arms stretched out. He stood bravely on his one leg, his eyes fixed on her. Then the clock struck 12, and the lid of the snuff box flew open, revealing not tobacco, but a small black troll. The snuff box had a trick. "Tin soldier," said the troll, "don't look where he shouldn't." But the tin soldier pretended not to hear. "Just wait until morning comes," said the troll. And morning came. The children arose, and the tin soldier was placed on the windowsill. Suddenly, whether by the troll's grace or a draft, the window burst open, and the soldier plummeted. It was a terrifying flight. The soldier threw his helmet and bayonet into the air, stuck his head between cobblestones, and remained stuck upside down. The boy and the maid immediately ran out to look for him, but couldn't see him, even though they were practically stepping on him. If he had shouted, they would have found him. But it wasn't proper for a soldier to shout at the top of his lungs. He was wearing his uniform. It began to drizzle, the drops falling more frequently, and finally, a full-blown downpour came pouring down. When it stopped, 2 street urchins came. "Look," said one, "there's a tin soldier. Let's send him afloat." And they made a boat out of newspaper, put the tin soldier in it, and he floated down the gutter. The boys ran alongside him, clapping their hands. What waves were rolling along the ditch! What a swift current! Of course, after such a downpour, the boat was tossed up and down and spun so much that the tin soldier was shaking all over. But he held firm his rifle over his shoulder, his head straight, his chest out. Suddenly, the boat dove under the long bridge across the ditch. It became so dark. Where am I going? He thought. Yes, it's all the troll's doing. If only that young lady were in the boat with me, then it would be twice as dark, and that would be nothing. At that moment, a large water rat from under the bridge appeared. Got a passport. Say, ask it. Show me your passport. But the tin soldier was speechless and only clutched his rifle even tighter. The boat sped onward and onward, and the rat swam after it. Ooh! How? She gnashed her teeth. How she screamed at the wood chips and straws floating towards her. Stop him, he hasn't paid the duty. He has no passport. But the tin soldier seemed to be speechless, clutching his gun even tighter. The boat was carried forward and forward, and the rat swam after it. Ouch! How she gnashed her teeth. How she screamed at the wood chips and straws floating towards her. Stop him! Stop him! He hasn't paid the duty. He has no passport. But the current grew stronger and stronger, and the tin soldier was already seeing light ahead, when suddenly there was a noise that would have frightened any brave man. Hustimagin, at the end of the bridge, a drainage ditch emptied into a large canal. For the soldier, this was as dangerous as for us, racing toward a large waterfall in a boat. Now the canal was so close, it was impossible to stop. The boat was carried out from under the bridge. The poor fellow held on as best he could, and didn't even blink. The boat spun around 3-4 times, filled to the brim with water, and began to sink. The soldier found himself up to his neck in water, and the boat sank deeper and deeper, the paper becoming soggy. Finally, the water covered the soldier's head, and then he thought of the lovely little dancer. He would never see her again. A voice began to ring in his ears. Push onward, warrior! Death will overtake you. Then the paper finally came apart, and the soldier sank to the bottom. But at that very moment, a large fish swallowed him. Oh, how dark it was inside, even worse than under the bridge over the drain pipe, and cramped to boot. But the tin soldier didn't lose courage, and lay stretched out full length, holding his rifle. The fish circled and began to perform the most bizarre leaps. Suddenly, it froze, as if struck by lightning. A light flashed, and someone shouted, "A tin soldier!" It turned out the fish had been caught, taken to market, sold, brought into the kitchen, and the cook slit its belly open with a large knife. Then the cook took the soldier by the waist with 2 fingers and brought him into the room. Everyone wanted to see such a wonderful little man, of course. He'd made his journey inside a fish's belly. But the tin soldier wasn't the least bit proud. They placed him on the table, and what wonders do exist in this world. He found himself in the same room, saw the same children, the same toys on the table, and a wonderful palace with a charming little dancer. She still stood on one leg, lifting the other high. She, too, was steadfast. The soldier was touched and almost wept in tears, but that would have been unseemly. He looked at her, she at him, but they didn't say a word to each other. Suddenly, one of the little ones grabbed the tin soldier and threw him into the stove, even though the soldier had done nothing wrong. This, of course, was orchestrated by the troll in the snuff box. The tin soldier stood in the flames, engulfed in a terrible heat. But whether it was fire or love, he couldn't tell. The color had completely faded from him. No one could say whether from the journey or from grief. He looked at the little dancer, and she at him, and he felt himself melting. But he still held firm, never letting go of his rifle. Suddenly, the door to the room swung open. The dancer was caught by the wind, and like a silk, she fluttered straight into the stove next to the tin soldier, burst into flames, and was gone. The tin soldier melted into a ball, and the next morning the maid, raking out the ashes, found a tin heart instead of the soldier. All that remained of the dancer was a sparkle, charred and black as coal.